He-Man is back, people. He's here in The Fall of Grayskull, which is a 2015 fan film. Now, in case you don't know, a fan film is literally that, is a film made by fans, not for any kind of profit, because they can't, obviously for copyright reasons. They really made it purely for the love of the property. So any monies that are put into it are put in by the people making it, and they can't market it to make money back, obviously, like I say, for copyright reasons. So that, in fact, being said, you can't really judge it the same as you would as a kind of, even a B movie, because these films are made to kind of turn a profit. This one is, and it might make some money back on kind of ad stream from YouTube and things like that, but ultimately you have to kind of judge it in almost like a separate category. Now, on talking about this, I will actually link the description to this full film in the description box, so go check it out, go and give them some support, and obviously, you know, subscribe to their channel, and obviously, I guess, watch future things that they'll put out. So we're going to talk about Fall of Grayskull. I'll give you a brief plot summary. Basically, it's a half-hour film, so it's a reasonable length for a kind of a fan film. Normally they're kind of around sort of 10 minutes, but there are a few longer ones, and this is one of them. Now, as a comparison, the TV shows were normally around sort of 22 minutes long. And basically, it kind of takes place part way through an adventure. He-Man's been kind of captured by Skeletor, who of course is after Grayskull, whatever, and up to Teela and an unlikely ally to try and rescue him. So that's kind of all I'll really say in regards to plot, because I'll come on to why in just a moment. So like I said, you can't kind of judge these things quite as much as like even B movies, because they simply don't have the budgets. You do have to bear that in mind, but I will, you know, I am going to kind of critique it in what I feel will be some fair points here. So let's talk about the some of the positives and negatives here. First of all, I'll talk about the opening, an opening monologue by Alan Oppenheimer, and if you're a fan of Masters of the Universe, you'll know who that person is. The interesting thing here, and this is the departure from maybe what we've seen before, is it has a mature tone. This is basically made for adults. There is actually some gore in here. People get killed. There's a beheading. There's all sorts of things in here. So it is definitely aimed at a more mature audience. But I'm going to call back to this as well, the negative as well. The aesthetics, I thought the actual look of this movie was very good. They've done a great job in kind of recreating, but modernising some of the kind of the looks of some of the characters here. Now, this has been taking cues from a variety of sources. We have Tri-klops, for example, who is one of Skeletor's hench people, and he's kind of ripped right out of the 2002 kind of remake cartoon. Out of all of them, I would say he's maybe a little bit too skinny, to be honest with you. But you've got kind of like modernisations, like Evil Lynn, for example, is far more gothy, for example. Teela kind of looks kind of very kind of different as well. But you've got like the Sorceress, for example, pretty much taken straight out of the 80s cartoon here. And Skeletor is looking pretty classic as well. But they do use some visual effects here as well, and I thought they were done again for a fan film to good effect here. There's a nice use of some sort of computer generated magical effects. I especially enjoyed when obviously He-Man and Skeletor have their inevitable clash, their kind of sparks flying when they're kind of fighting and stuff like that. So I did enjoy, you know, the kind of the visual effects that they put in. There's a fair amount as well. And I really enjoyed the after credit scene as well. So make sure you stay till after the credits. There's kind of a nice little Marvel style secret scene there. Now, I will have to say some negatives. Now, I'm not going to, yeah, it's all done on green screen, so it kind of looks a bit green screen, but I'm not going to pick on it for that, because, you know, what can you do with this kind of limited budget? The stuff here I've kind of talked about is stuff maybe that is not necessarily to do with the kind of the budget restrictions. So the first thing is it kind of looks like a porn parody. I have to be honest with you. You know, I've reviewed a couple of porn parodies on the channel, and the way the kind of the acting is, and the kind of the some of the kind of the design choices, to me reminds me of a porn parody. And if you've watched some of the kind of the non-sex porn parody scenes, you'll know exactly what I mean. And I have to be honest with you, the actual story I thought was a little bit boring, to be honest. It kind of picks up towards the end, but it was an odd choice to have it almost starting in the middle of a story. There is a prequel comic, but nevertheless, I don't know. The first part of the story was kind of boring and kind of talky. There's quite a few long pauses in this as well, which is I found like an odd choice. if you think back to the cartoon shows, I mean, they had 22 minutes to kind of do a beginning, middle and end of a story. And I personally felt maybe they kind of should have done somewhat like that. To be honest with you, you could probably tell, you know, a beginning, middle and end story in the kind of the half an hour time limit they've got, but it felt like part of a story, and it kind of felt like you'd already missed this kind of like this big setup scene, and you were kind of in the kind of the slower talking section at the beginning of the movie here, which would have been in the middle of a regular film or something. Do you understand what I mean? So I did feel it was kind of a little boring at places, and like I said, there are times in this film where there just seem to be overlong pauses in between conversations, especially when there are action scenes. People will kind of stand around and just wait to die and things like that. Now, I mentioned the tone. It has a mature tone, but I do have a problem with this. And the problem is that the characters are portrayed like cartoon characters. Now, you could argue with me and say, yeah, well, it's based on a cartoon. That is true. But if you're going to have an adult tone and have kind of gore and stuff like that, and obviously people dying and their heads melting and stuff like that, you have to have the characters act like adults and not like cartoon characters, which I found sort of an odd dichotomy here. You had the kind of, obviously, on one hand the adult tone, but then they kind of act like the 80s cartoon characters, and the kind of the dialogue, and like I said, just hanging around and getting killed and stuff like that, and waiting to have a sword plunged into things like that. There's loads of kind of these little just basic and kind of rudimentary things and kind of more juvenile kind of things that I felt that the characters ended up looking like cartoons in a lot of ways, which is the ironic thing, I suppose. And this is kind of a nerdy nitpick here, so this is really going to my nerdy side here. I felt the way the powers were depicted, although they were visually good, some people were overpowered and some people were underpowered. And Skeletor is a good example of someone who is underpowered here. He's meant to be the big bad guy. You know, he's standing around watching his minions get literally slaughtered, and whenever he is called to do something, his powers don't really seem to be all that powerful. Without spoiling something for you, there's that he attacks someone who should be very weak, and judging what we've seen by some of the other powers on display here, should be able to finish him off no problem, but it doesn't happen. So without I can't really go into too much on that without spoiling, but there's certain things I feel were overpowered and things that are underpowered here as well. The guy who plays He-Man himself, big guy, and obviously they've gone for a proper muscle dude here. Kind of reminds me of Lou Ferrigno in his kind of acting sort of style. If you've seen him in like the non-Hulk stuff, basically, where he's like Hercules, kind of like that. Maybe he stumbles on some of the kind of the lines here a little bit, but I guess it's okay for if you're kind of going for more of like a B-movie vibe, if you see what I mean here. And there is I didn't kind of understand one of the plot points here. There's this kind of stone monster that turns up, and I didn't really get the relevance. I think he's meant to be the living incarnation of a famous place, shall we say, but I didn't understand why he had He-Man's hair and things, and like I don't really get it, and what he was supposed to be doing. So I felt that there was some things that weren't well explained, to be quite honest. Now, you could say, oh well, you need to read the comic book to kind of understand this all, but you should judge a movie by its own credentials without having to kind of read extraneous material, I feel. So I did feel that visually, obviously, it looked fantastic. They certainly got the aesthetics right, but story-wise and the kind of the way it was presented, I felt was a little bit, needed some work, if in my opinion. Can I do better? No, I don't make films, so, you know, this is me telling you my opinion of it. But they did a great job. If you're a He-Man fan, you were, you know, in my opinion, you're going to love the aesthetics of it, and you'll enjoy watching it for what it is, a fan film. It's certainly the kind of probably the best live-action Marvel Master of the Universe that we've got. It's obviously far more faithful than the kind of the Dolph Lundgren version, of course, but there you go. I'm not going to rate this one because it is a fan film. I feel that would be a little unfair. But you've heard my thoughts on it. Like I said, go check it out in the description. Go watch it for yourself and let us know what you think. Bye for now.